Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we'll be looking at the best healers for patch 8.1.5. Using logs from 8.1 is going to be fine because the changes that have been made to healers are not very significant. To some extent, Resto Shamans probably received the biggest nerf going into 8.1.5, and that is to do with Ascendance / Spouting Spirit interaction, which is not that big of a deal because Resto Shamans at the start of Mythic Battle of Dazar'alor were doing fine without it. Anyways, so we'll look at the healers. We'll look at the healers, possibly predictions for their latest raid, Crucible of Storms, and we'll be looking at heroic and mythic logs and comparing how each healer does in raid situations and mythic plus situations. We'll be talking about mythic plus at the end of the video as well. So first of all, let's look at the raiding scenarios. Let's look at the raiding environment, and here we have logs of all the healers. We'll be talking about restoration druids first, but it's kind of interesting to point out that when you compare mythic logs, you'll notice that proactive healers such as restoration druids and discipline priests are doing pretty well in terms of HPS and mythic logs, and when you go to heroic logs, you notice that they kind of dip down, and there's multiple reasons for that. Like there's also player skill, things like damage patterns that are happening. There is a heavy differentiation between heroic and mythic logs. But when we look at Restoration Druid in raiding environment, a lot of people have been saying the Resto Druids have fallen a lot. And to some extent, in terms of healing, they have not. Right before Mythic Battle of Dazar'alor was being released, right before the race was going to start, there was changes made by Blizzard a day before the Mythic was released, where it was, I think, around between 2 or 3% in terms of throughput increase for Resto Druids, where they increased the efflorescence healing, they reduced the mana cost of Light Bloom and efflorescence and things like that. And this change was actually pretty good to bring Resto Druids in terms of HPS between, like, you know, Mistweaver's Holy Priest, and these are the top HPS healers right now in Mythic content. So Resto Druids in terms of HPS are among one of the best healers. They're right in there. The healing balance is actually very decent, and Resto Druids are in there. Now the problem comes in if you're a top mythic raiding guild, if you're looking to bring in healers, and Resto Druid is a raid healer, and then you have to compare Resto Druid for something like a Holy Priest, or let's say for example Resto Shaman. And that's where the problems come in, because Resto Druid niche is not defined anymore. Before, in previous expansions, Resto Druid was the healer on the move, which was quite important for certain boss fights. In Battle of Dazar'alor and possibly in the future raids, that's not as ingrained as it was before. All of a sudden, Resto Druid is just there for the HPS. The utility is not really there when you compare it to something like a Resto Shaman, who has like Spirit Link, who has like utility totems, or like even a Holy Priest, who all of a sudden now has 2 healing cooldowns and can cover 2 heavy, you know, scenarios in a boss fight. So all of a sudden, even though Resto Druids are up there in terms of pure HPS that they can provide, the utility is somewhat lacking. If you're not looking to be top 100 or things like that, you don't really have to worry about class utility, and Resto Druid will provide more than enough healing and will compete with anybody else. The problem arises when you're looking for that extra utility buttons outside of pure HPS. Let's look at a complete opposite scale, and we're going to be looking at Resto Shaman. Resto Shaman is the utility king and has kinda came back to be to its full glory like it was in Legion. All of a sudden Cloudburst totem is back, like Chain Heal feels very strong. All of a sudden Resto Shamans are there, man. Their utility is amazing. It's the utility totems, and we'll talk about Mythic Jaina. We'll talk about how important Resto Shamans were for Mythic Jaina. We'll talk about how important Resto Shamans were for the last 3 bosses in Battle of Dazar'alor, Megatork, Blockade, and Jaina, of course, where Shamans are arguably the kings of healers. And we're not talking about the pure healing, because their healing is very good. Their healing in stack scenarios is amazing, and the last 3 bosses, if you do the Mythic content, you'll notice that you have to stack Megatork, Blockade, Jaina. The whole raid is stacked for majority of those encounters, and Resto Shamans, again, really strong. Now, you don't bring a Resto Shaman just due to its healing. There are multiple other reasons to bring a Resto Shaman. Like, for example, on Mythic Jaina encounter, having Spirit Link is very strong. Having Healing Tower, having 2 healing cooldowns is very important. Having utility totems like Windrush Totem is very important. And of course, one of the biggest reasons things like Ancestral Protection Totem or the Battle Res Totem, which allows you to sacrifice a member and they'll be able to use this totem and res again without using a Battle Res. So this kind of thing, this totem was almost mandatory in Mythic Jaina encounter, which made Resto Shamans to some extent. You can beat Mythic Jaina without a Resto Shaman, but your raid has to almost execute every mechanic perfectly with no one dying. If you have a Resto Shaman, all of a sudden someone can die in phase 1, someone can die in phase 2, and you can still continue, and you'll still be able to do the boss, because when you sacrifice your tank, you'll be able to use this totem. So Resto Shaman gave you this, outside of the healing that it provides, it gave you these utility totems that were extremely powerful, and it made Resto Shamans the kings of Mythic Battle of Dazar'alor in terms of the utility they provide. And you'll notice that a lot of guilds will be recruiting Resto Shamans for just the last couple of bosses, because they're the hardest and Resto Shamans are the best for those fights. If we look at other raid healers, we can look at Holy Priest, and Holy Priest has been doing really well in Battle of Dazar'alor. It's been doing really well in BfA overall. It's like essential raid healer. He has so many abilities to deal with AoE healing. He has arguably one of the best healing cooldowns in the game with Holy War Salvation, considering that Tranquility got a big nerf coming into 8.1. So all of a sudden Holy Priest, with its mastery accounts for majority of your Holy Priest healing. The AoE cooldowns that they have in terms of pure raid healing, Holy Priests are really strong right now. And I mentioned there's quite a few utility things that you can provide as well, with things like life grip, and you can like mind control as well, was very important in certain boss fights. But overall, Holy Priest, essential raid healer. Relatively easy to play, hard to master kind of deal, but it's a very good raid healer, and it's one of the top raid healers. If we're looking at a more proactive healers again, we can look at Discipline Priest. And Discipline Priest has kind of, you know, at the start of BfA, Discipline was absolutely broken in raid scenarios. Discipline was so strong, it would do so much healing, way above everybody else, and Discipline got quite heavy nerfs coming into the latest patches. So all of a sudden Discipline is, you know, it's kind of there. It's not the most powerful healing spec in the game by a mile, but it's in the middle of the pack, top of the pack, depending how you play. If you view the logs, you'll notice that I'm using 75% parses, which means that you're playing your healer to a decent extent. If you look at like 95% parses, or like the max parses that you can do, which kind of means that you're playing your class in the best possible way, you'll notice that Discipline climbs. So the better healer you are, the more you can climb as a Discipline Priest, which is very meaningful, because Discipline Priests are quite hard to play. And you'll notice that in heroic content, it's usual that Discipline Priests will fall because maybe the player is not aware of the damage patterns. They don't know. The skill level is a huge part of a Discipline Priest. If you know how to play Discipline Priest, you'll be an essential asset to your raid team. The damage the Discipline Priest provides is insane. It was very evident for Mythic Jaina encounter, where not only the healing was important, but also the damage that the Discipline Priest provided. So this is still in a very good position, and you will climb if you play it better. Other healers, their skill ceiling is kind of capped to an extent that there's not a lot of things that you can improve on, and you kind of will be around the same kind of HPS. With a Discipline Priest, you're always climbing, you're always improving, and that's just the way that proactive healers usually tend to go. Now, if you look at actually Mistweaver Monk, and Mistweaver Monk has been just strong throughout the whole BfA. Mistweaver Monk in terms of raid environments, again, I'll kind of go back to the utility of, like, say, Restoration Druid, who provides a lot of, like, you know, provides a lot of HPS, but maybe lacking in terms of other things that you can do. And you kind of compare, like, should I bring a Resto Druid, or should I bring a Resto Shaman, or maybe Mistweaver? Because Mistweaver can provide a very good AoE healing, and on top of that, they can provide the best single target healing in the game. So Mistweaver can be used for multiple different things. For example, if your tank needs a lot of healing for this part of the fight, Mistweaver might focus on the tank. And then when there's a lot of healing, they just press Essence Font with Upwelling, and all of a sudden there'll be a massive amount of healing coming out of Mistweaver. So Mistweaver is very good at both raid healing and single target healing. And they're just a type of healer that you can stack quite a lot depending on what you need. So Mistweaver is still an extremely strong healer, very good both in raid and 5-man environments, and I'll talk about 5-mans later on. Relatively easy to play. There is some concerns to do with the mana consumption that Mistweavers and counter during fights, and a lot of people are having issues with mana consumption as Mistweaver. They just need to get used to kind of, if you're coming from other healers into Mistweaver, you have to get used to filler abilities. But outside of that, Mistweaver is an excellent choice for raids, and it'll probably be an excellent choice in Crucible of Storms as well. Now, if we look at Holy Paladin is kind of in a weird position right now because there is a new build. So Holy Paladin has two viable builds. Both of those builds are very, very different in terms of the stat priority, in terms of the talent choices, like everything changes. So you have the Glimmer of Light build, which is an Azeroth trait where you stack 2 or 3 of these traits, and all of a sudden you have an option of kind of providing these mini beacons or glimmer of lights on the whole raid, and every time you holy shock, they're gonna get healed, they're gonna get applied glimmer. And this build and stat priority is completely different from your default Holy Paladin build, because all of a sudden haste becomes extremely important. All of a sudden you're going different talent builds. You probably will go with Divine Purpose, so you only have 1 beacon. So the playstyle is very, very different, and people are kind of coming along this playstyle right now. They were very scared about this Glimmer of Light being nerfed. In 8.1.5 it is not being nerfed, so it looks like it's going to stay here, at least for now. So I feel this is a very cool change, because Holy Paladins, in my opinion, needed a more avenues in terms of gameplay, because I feel that what happened, or the transition from Legion to BfA was kind of stale for Holy Paladins. So all of a sudden you have a new build emerging. A lot of people have put Holy Paladins down because of their healing. Holy Paladins is still a strong raid healer, regardless whether they're going with Glimmer of Light or with the default build. There is a lot of people complaining about the gameplay. Again, Glimmer of Light gameplay is quite fun, it's interesting, it's very, very good in terms of the mana usage. You provide a lot of damage to the boss. So Holy Paladins is still a solid raid healer, and they're kind of emerging in 5-mans as well, but we'll talk about that later on. But don't be put down by the healing that they provide. A lot of the times, you know, Devotion Ore doesn't show up on the meters and things like that. You're still a good asset to the raid team. And I hope that if you are a Holy Paladin, try out the Glimmer of Light. It'll give you a different kind of perspective or different kind of healing. And let me know how you enjoy Glimmer of Light if you do opt in to switch. So now we'll look at the Mythic plus balance. And Mythic plus balance has kind of steered into one direction over the 8.1, 8.1.5 patch. Because at the start of BfA, if I were to rank healers at the start of BfA in terms of Mythic Plus, I would probably say like Resto, Druid, Mistweaver were really strong at that point. Discipline Priest was really strong before the nerfs that happened to them. And now in 8.15, it's basically only one healer at the top, and that is a Restoration Druid. Resto Druid in Mythic Plus is back to its glory days in Legion. In Legion, the best Mythic Plus healers were Resto Druids and Holy Paladins, and in BfA patch 1 or 8.15, it is Resto Druid firmly at the top. You can look at the participation logs, you can look at the top Resto Druids doing highest keys like 24s, 23s and things like that. It's all Resto Druids with some sprinkling of other healers. Possibly you could say that Mistweavers are second best, maybe. Then you can look at Holy Paladins emerging, maybe Discipline Priest still there, maybe even Resto Shamans kind of coming up in there as well. But the numbers are you cannot compare the numbers between Resto Druids and then everybody else, because Resto Druids are dominating the highest keys, and that is because of how well they're scaling. With the increased item level, with mastery scaling really well, Resto Druids, in terms of the pure throughput that they can provide, they can maintain huge amount of HPS for prolonged periods of time with little mana usage. So all of a sudden, where other healers, they can probably maintain a good or really high HPS numbers, they might run out of mana, they might not have the same utility. Resto Druids can do a crazy amount of healing and DPS with just few global cooldowns. Sunfire alone in a large trash pack can provide a good amount of DPS with just one global cooldown, where other healers kind of have to decide, hey, I'm going full DPS right now because I can't heal while DPSing. And Resto Druids can do that through HOTS, through mastery stacking. And it was very interesting because Blizzard, at the very start of Mythic Battle of Dazar'alor, before it was going to be released, they wanted to nerf Resto Druid Mastery, and they wanted to buff Efflorescence. And a lot of people view this as, okay, they're nerfing Resto Druids in 5-mans, but they're buffing them in raids. And at the very last minute, Blizzard decided to revert the change with the Mastery nerf, and they didn't nerf the Mastery. And I feel that, unfortunately, in the near future, Blizzard might come back to this change, They might look at Mythic Plus, they might look at MDI, because I feel majority of healers in MDI are going to be Resto Druids, and they might look into nerfing Resto Druids in Mythic Plus without nerfing them in raid scenarios. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see how other classes are going to scale. But right now, Resto Druids are firmly at the top. Like I mentioned before, Mistweavers are probably there. Second, maybe. Holy Paladins. Like, the balance between everyone else is pretty okay. But Resto is definitely the class of choice for the top Mythic Plus pushers. So just to provide a small summary for raids and Mythic Plus, if you're playing a healer in a like heroic, let's say entry Mythic guild, and you're wondering which healer to play in raids, don't worry about it. The healer balance is actually extremely good right now, with a lot of the healers being very close to each other in terms of pure HPS. If you look at the utility plus the HPS ranking, and this is for people who are going to be pushing really high-end Mythic raiding content, we have to mention that probably Resto Shaman right now is just, it's an amazing healer right now. The healing that it can output, the utility that it provides is almost unmatched by any other healer, especially in Battle of Dazar'alor, especially for the harder content or the harder bosses. If you look at other healers kind of fall into this row. I would have to mention like Mistweaver's Holy Priest, I would have to mention Discipline Priest. All of those healers provide some sort of utility outside of the healing. Like, for example, Mistweaver can provide good single target healing. At the same time, they also provide good AoE healing, which can be regarded as their utility, even though Revival to some extent might not be the strongest healing cooldown in the game. To some extent, Holy Priest have 2 healing cooldowns, and Discipline Priest have an ability of dealing a ton of damage, letting the guild push extra boss DPS on top of the good healing. And then if we look at the other healers, I have to mention that Holy Paladins, again, I don't really want to go crazy into the Glimmer of Light in case it does get nerfed and all of a sudden Glimmer of Light is not going to be possible. But Holy Paladins are probably a little bit down at the end, just because like Mistweavers can provide really good single target healing. Their AoE healing is not that amazing. Again, there is a lot of utility that Holy Paladins can provide, and if you play a Holy Paladin, or if you don't have, you require that tank healing, Holy Paladin Beacon transfer is pretty decent. Again, you have to remember Holy Paladins are still raid healers. Their Beacon will transfer a lot of healing to tanks, but they have to heal the raid in order to be fully utilized. You have to keep that in mind. And then a healer that is right now is looking to be a pure HPS healer is probably going to be Restoration Druid. Outside of really good healing, outside of that healing on the move, which again I mentioned is not as engraved in this patch right now, Resto Druids don't bring that much in terms of utility. But if you're not looking for that class utility, if you're not looking for that, Resto Druids are perfect raid healers to bring in raids. And in Mythic Plus, it's definitely been a Resto Druid stream right now. I'm enjoying my Resto Druid Mythic Plus immensely. I'm kind of unhappy about certain changes with the cat weaving where Innovate doesn't affect it. But overall, I don't think that's going to affect Resto Druids that much. They're still going to be very strong in it. So the healing balance has been, in raids, very decent. In Mythic Plus, we'll have to see how MDI is going to shape up. But I feel Resto Druids are going to dominate in that aspect. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed these kind of videos of this kind of content, please do subscribe. Check out my Patreon as well. It really helps out. It helps me out and I'm able to bring these kind of videos. Thank you guys for watching this, and I'll see you in my next guide.